Welcome, welcome. It is the Fantasy NBA Waiver Wire Show for Sports Ethos with Ethan and Eric. Eric, good morning. Ethan, good evening. Got both sides of the world being covered here with all of that, and it feels like fantasy basketball is a little bit on the, a little bit of coming from the upside down, a little bit on its head right now. Eric, I told you just before we came on air, I said, looking at the waiver wire last week or so, and just kind of monitoring some trends, some injuries, guys still in the health and safety protocols. We can't forget about that. A lot of this is just roster management. There hasn't been, this oh my God, season saving type of guy to emerge. There hasn't been this really like long term injury at this point where you're going to find somebody on the waiver who's still are still on the wire, still floating around because the injuries that are longer term are ones that are known about. But Eric, I got some names written down on my sheet here. I figure we could start there. If anyone has questions, of course, that's what we're here for. But figure we would start with some names that we have here as my cat tries to destroy my table in the process. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, everything but the cat destroying the table sounds good, right? I know.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. All right, man. So first name I want to give you is a guy that you brought up last week, Denny Avdija. I'm surprised he's still not rostered in more leagues. I know Washington, has its pretty much its core guys on the table. Beal's in the lineup. Kuzma did miss some time today. He had a back issue, but Porzingis has been healthy. They've got who they've needed to have basically. But then all of a sudden, we call it this sort of sometimes the post-hype sleeper, right? And when he was drafted, everybody thought he'd come in and be a little bit more than what he was for the Wizards. And as it turns out, maybe now he's just getting his feet, sort of underneath him and he's getting settled. Damn near had a triple-double the other day. Eric, you talked about him last week, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you on your boy here.
All right. So I recently picked up Avdija in a 12-team league, in a league that I'm playing against Brewski. It's an 8-cat roto. And
Okay.
I gave up somebody, who hasn't been performing well and who hasn't been playing at all recently, and that's Monte Morris. So I think that switch up is worth it. And I've noticed a lot of people were using Denny as a streamer for a while, but I think that it's going to be a long-term situation already. I think that he's finally come into his own, and he's going to be bringing that well-rounded game. That he's a very capable passer. He's a willing defender. Now that his the offensive side of his game is maturing, and he's able to be more confident once the ball is in his hands. He knows whether to shoot or to pass. I guess that just took some time. Like you said, we're talking about post-hype, breakout from the guy. It just not everyone is NBA ready when they get to the league, and not everyone develops at the same rate. Slow and steady. Take for example, Kawhi Leonard took like 3 to 4 seasons before he became NBA relevant. On the Spurs.
Well, to your point, I mean, everybody tried to write off Andrew Wiggins after his third year with Minnesota, and look where he is now, right? So sometimes it doesn't follow the same trajectory for every guy.
Exactly. So you have guys who sometimes develop, quick and are all ready to produce even straight out of draft day, like Banchero, for example, for the Magic, who's been pretty good. Injury, missing time from his ankle injury aside, the games he's been able to play have been looking very good. So in Avdia's case, I think it's a matter of him learning slowly, and I think it's something that's going to stick. I think that his role is very clear, and he doesn't really have any competition for minutes, because somebody like Hachimura, for example, who can play both forward spots, tends to back up Kuzma more. They use Hachimura more as a power forward, and obviously Hachimura has his own drawbacks on the defensive end. So I would recommend, if you do pick him up, Avdia, and you did, hold on to him. I think that long term his outlook is looking pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I think regardless of kind of who's out on the floor there, I agree with you. He's kind of solidified his role. I think the Wizards would love if Rui Hachimura even showed some flashes like Denny has recently. I mean, that was a big pick for them, and it hasn't looked so good so far. But I think one of the things with Denny is, because he's not a specialist, right? He doesn't sink a ton of threes, doesn't score a ton, he doesn't grab a ton of rebounds, doesn't dish the ball a ton, but he just does enough, right, to kind of keep himself on that fringe top 100, top 125 kind of guy. He's definitely not going to win your league for you, but he's really not going to hurt you either. And I think that there's an underrated value in guys like that, that the steadiness of the ship over the course of a long-term season, where, you know, everybody's trying to find that flash in the pan, that guy who's going to be hot for 2 weeks, but there's no sustainability behind him. And I think Denny has that, to your point, the sustainability, and he's got the role carved out for him in Washington now, where clearly they've seen some of the same things that we're seeing with our own eyes, and they want to give him that rope because, yes, Porzingis is healthy, and yes, Bradley Beal is healthy, and yes, except for today, like we were saying, Kyle Kuzma's been healthy, and still Denny's getting on the floor, and that wasn't the case prior. It took an injury for him to see the court prior, and now he's seeing it regardless of who else is out there. So I agree with you. As a back-end roster kind of guy, I think he deserves to be rostered in more leagues. Okay, so I'm right there with you on Denny. Let me give you a guy who I think is going to skyrocket over the next 2 weeks in terms of percentage ownership. Okay, and that's my guy. You know, I always got to work in a Laker angle here, Eric. Okay, that's my guy, Dennis Schroeder. Okay, Patrick Beverley suspended for 3 games. Dennis Schroeder gets his first start of the season, and every time I've been watching Schroeder since he's made his season debut, because remember, it was a little delayed due to the thumb injury and the surgery, he has just looked increasingly more comfortable. He doesn't look perfect out there, but of the Lakers' 3 point guards, he damn well might be the best fit with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Remember, he was the one that won the championship with LeBron and Anthony Davis, right? And if you notice, even with Patrick Beverley on the sidelines, Dennis Schroeder played a lot more than Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook has sort of, I don't want to say he's fallen off a cliff off the bench role, but he's not having that same sort of, you know, when he first came off the bench, he was like electric in a pan. He's made a little bit more mistakes over the last week or so. He's forcing few things, still turning over too much. But I agree with you. I think Dennis Schroeder is their best option at point guard. And I think this is one of those things, because he hasn't produced a lot, not a lot of people are forward thinking on this. It's a lot of reactionary, right? In our industry, we see big game and then people chase it. They don't do the forward thinking thing as much, which is why we like to do that for them. I think Dennis Schroeder is an underrated pickup and sort of a low-end gamble. Easy one for me.
I agree. Just mirroring the Los Angeles teams, yeah. I personally prefer picking up Schroeder and hanging on to him and seeing where he goes over, let's say, a Reggie Jackson, who has a similar, stat set. We're talking about points and threes mainly. Now, my concern with Schroeder, as in terms of projecting what he'll provide my fantasy teams, is he going to do more than just points, threes, and occasionally good field goal? I don't see him passing the ball a lot. He's never been particularly a great defender. So he has a capped upside. But what I like about him, especially this season, now that he's healthy, is that he's got this huge chip on his shoulder. This is the guy who turned down big money to get, to get pennies. And now he realized, obviously, at some point, realized the mistake he made.
Yep.
And is clawing his way back into a certain level of relevance to make his stock value go up. I mean, literally, he wants his value to go up in real life. And obviously, most of the time, the stats are going to follow if he's, going to translate all of that usage into productive, the productive kind of usage and not just turnovers. Yeah. So guys with stuff to prove, I generally like it, especially if they have some kind of history of being able to produce. Let's not forget that he was kind of stellar in Eurobasket. He was playing pretty well. And
that's what got him the contract with the Lakers.
And it just all got derailed by that injury, by that, late start to the season. But now that he's working his way, yes, I agree. I would recommend that he be picked up. I'd roll the dice on him in a 12-team league. Sure, why not? I'm just not going to be expecting a lot of, peripherals beyond. I mean, think about it. He could still end up being a better Lonnie Walker at the end of the day, because I think that Schroeder can at least pass the ball. He's, still bringing down the ball, passing, and if he passes it to LeBron and LeBron just decides to shoot it, he gets an assist right away. Unlike Walker, who's just, mainly catch and shoot. Schroeder's there, and he can attack the basket. He's just a more well-rounded player overall. So I love him. Good call. I'm on board.
Okay.
Go Dennis.
All right. Dennis the Menace. So I mean, here's my thing with Schroeder is I think if he hadn't had that injury during training camp, he might have actually been the starter for the season for the Lakers.
Yeah.
I think that was a strong possibility. Here's the other thing for me. There's kind of this. You talk about fumbling the bag, right? You turn down $80 million to play with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and Schroeder has this ultimate sort of piece in the Lakers fabric of what if? Because had he agreed to that extension, there is no Russell Westbrook trade, and this team looks vastly different than its current iteration, right? It's kind of like what if
we're
Joel
going into
Embiid,
multiverse issues already.
right. It's like what if Joel Embiid had played his first year, right? All these scenarios in the NBA. I agree with you. In order for Schroeder to be a true asset for fantasy in the greatest sense of the word, he has to add something else besides scoring. He's got to have at least 5 assists a game. He's got to hit at least 2 threes a game. He's got to have at least a couple steals a game. One of those things has to click for him to really push into the top 100 sustainably, especially in a 9-cat league, because you worry about the turnover. It's not that he's a chronic turnover guy like Westbrook, but he's a point guard. He's going to turn the ball. He's going to turn the ball over. Okay, he's not an elite shooter, but he's certainly going to get some opportunity to shoot from behind the 3-point line, especially as the confidence in his jump shot returns after the surgery with the thumb, with everything. But as this Lakers season progresses, you watch how they've played the last handful of games here. Hey, by the way, in case anyone hasn't been watching, Lakers are 5-1 in their last 6 games. Okay, I know a lot of that, like 3 of those wins have come against the Spurs. I get it, right? But you got to beat who's in front of you on the schedule. They were very competitive against the Suns. In fact, they probably would have won that Suns game had they been able to hit a single 3. They hit 4 the entire game. We're not going to sabotage this show and be all about the Lakers because we're talking about Schroeder. I think he's got fantasy value. Again, like Danny Avdija, is he going to win your league? No. Is he a good guy to gamble on the waiver at the expense of a streamer spot or some guy you can wait to cut off your roster? Absolutely. I think he's got upside despite the crowdedness of the position. The Lakers are going to have to play some unfamiliar, unorthodox lineups because they're too thin on the wing. Okay, so I can see some lineups that have Schroeder and Westbrook, Schroeder and Beverly, right? You can kind of get creative there. Lakers are going to have to play around to see what actually works, but I like Schroeder as a low gamble guy on the waiver wire right now. While we're in Los Angeles, Eric, let's stay here. Let's go with the Clippers. Clippers right now, PG and Kawhi both on the shelf. PG looks like a shorter-term issue. Kawhi in, out. We don't really know what's going on. I think that's going to be the theme of the season, okay, at least in the first half here. So in the interim, I got 2 guys for you. I like one better than the other. You got Norm Powell and Terrence Mann. I just want to tell you, Eric, Norm Powell in his last 3 games, all right, averaging 20.6 points with 3 threes, in the last 5 games. 20.6 points with 3 threes. Why is he on the wire? 5 games is a week and a half of production. That's a whole matchup, right? Like, that's a guy who, if you need threes, if you need points, it's easy.
He should be rostered everywhere.
Should be rostered, right?
Yeah,
Terrence Mann, a little less exciting for me. He can score the basketball. He dished it a little bit. The playing time is there right now, but that's more on the shorter term side for me. I think Norm Powell is a player the Clippers could use. Remember, because he can fill in multiple ways, right? If Luke Kennard misses time, he can fill in there too. So I like Norm Powell. I like Terrence Mann a lot less. I think Norm Powell is the guy. Is that where you're at with the Clippers while these 2 guys are on the sidelines too, George and Kawhi?
Yeah, definitely. And
okay.
I think it was like last week I was able to pick up Powell in a 12-team 8-cat head-to-head, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah.
Man is definitely somebody I'm recommending for probably deep leagues for now. He hasn't shown the consistency I'd be wanting to lean on if I were in a 12-teamer. But yeah, he's strung together like a couple of solid outings.
Yeah.
Tonight, it wasn't that great.
Exactly.
Poor shooting from the field, but that was 14 points, 7 boards, 5 assists. So that's still something I would consider being above average from what I'd be looking at on the wire. So yeah, I'd consider him as well.
Do you feel, Eric? I know we kind of touched on it briefly, and then we'll get to the first question that we have. But do you feel, or is it just me right now, that we're about a month into the season? I feel like we're weirdly thin on the waiver wire. I know I mentioned it just before we came on air to you. I feel like there hasn't just there. I don't know if it's just how the season is taking shape. I don't know if it's because there's so much parity in the NBA right now, especially in the Western Conference where you've got first place and last place, like 5 games difference between the whole conference. I don't know what it is, but there seems to be a little less volatility right now. Do you feel that that's due to anything in particular, or is it just kind of how this season is shaking out?
Unfortunately, I can't really point to any specific reason. But as far as swing players go, I would still have to throw a shout out to Shake Milton, who
Mm.
did step up after the Tyrese Maxey injury, and while we're awaiting the return of James Harden. Shake Milton has been scoring over 20 points per game, delivering assists, shooting well from the field, doing pretty much his best Tyrese Maxey impression,
Yeah.
in his own way. But, he's been a swing guy. And I'm falling like 4 or 5 in a lot of my leagues this week.
Yep.
But the one league I'm definitely winning is the league where I've been able, where I was able to pick up Shake Milton.
Okay.
And I also have him in a Roto league, and I jumped like 5 points over the course of this week. So Milton has been that kind of difference-making pickup that you claim that that there aren't any much of. But outside of him, I am scratching my head to think of anyone else. So what does that mean? Like you said, there aren't a lot of
right.
fantasy franchise changing guys. That just means more streaming, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
You keep on throwing darts at that board, and eventually you're gonna hit a bullseye and hope it sticks. And that's probably what I've been doing. Like I've been high on Kispert. Kispert sucked this week despite playing 30 plus minutes. Okay, I had him. I burned through my moves. As soon as the clock strikes, for the next week, I'm gonna drop him, pick up someone new, roll the dice again. That's all it is, really. So
I think that's it. Is like everybody, whether it's investments, fantasy basketball, whatever it is. I feel like so many people are looking for that always the home run. I want to invest $1 and turn it into $1,000, right? Well, if you invest $1 and you turn it into 3 or 4 often enough, you wind up pretty far ahead. And I think that's more of the realistic play, especially on a day-to-day waiver wire, right? Is that it's not always going to work. And sometimes you got to take that line of, a nice Denny Avdija line of 12, 5, and 4 and be like, you know what? That's a win. Wasn't explosive, but it was a win. He didn't turn the ball over, right? All that sort of stuff. It all plays together. So just even those micro victories can go a long way. Steven's got our question to get us going tonight. Thank you, Steven. I have a few empty spots on my roster due to injuries. Are Aaron Gordon and Nick Claxton must-add players? I'm going to let you go for this first, Eric, because my only response is if Aaron Gordon and Nick Claxton are on your waiver wire, maybe you should invite me into your league so I can take all the money there because clearly something's wrong.
It could be a shallow league. I mean, let's give him some benefit of the doubt here. It could be a shallow.
Yeah, Steven, if it's an 8-team league or if it's a 14-team league, makes a big difference here. So any additional details would be helpful as well.
That's true. So Claxton should be rostered in, I'd say, even 10-team leagues. Yep. Obviously, 12-team leagues. There's no question. Aaron Gordon, not as much because he's an on and off guy. But lately, I've been blurbing a lot of Nuggets games, and hey, Gordon's not so bad tonight. What's up with that? So I'm realizing that Gordon's been playing well in the absence of Michael Porter Jr. so far. I know that he's had a little bit of speed bumps lately with his own injuries, but Gordon, for the most part, has been looking pretty solid on the season. So yeah, I'd say they're both guys that the short answer is both guys you mentioned. Yes, feel free to pick them up, even if you're on a 10-team league, because I'm giving you the benefit that it is a shallow league.
All right, I think I'm gonna agree with you on that. Thank you, Steven. Like I said, any additional details would be helpful if you can give them to us. OJ, with one of my favorite questions so far of our young season here on this show. OJ said, "Is this Jabari Smith form a rest of season thing, or is this a sell high moment?" So, Eric, Jabari Smith Jr. in the last 3 games, he's coming off 3 games ago, 22-7. Game before after that, 21-9. Most recent game, 15-13. By the way, over that stretch of time, he's hit 11 threes. Field goal percentage is okay, could be a little bit better, but as a rookie, there's always going to be some ups and downs there. What I really love in these last stretch, you look at the minutes played, 31, 38, 32, 36, 30. All of those are season highs before, as it was compared to before. Is Jabari Smith the rest of season gamble for you, Eric? Because here's the other side. What are you going to trade him for right now?
Wow. All right. First of all, what he's producing now is kind of the upside that people were picturing when they first drafted him somewhere in the middle rounds. We're looking at a top 5 NBA draft pick who's supposedly one of the best 3 and D guys, uh, likened to Jaren Jackson Jr., who was, a guy who could, shoot threes, block shots, but not rebound the ball too well
Yeah.
and not shoot at a great clip. And so far, I think Jabari Smith is finally delivering after a slow start. Now, Smith was really terrible at the start, fine. And like I mentioned, sometimes you're not a Paolo Banchero who's, studly off the top. And it took some time for Smith to get into his groove, playing alongside high usage guys like Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green. It takes some time for him to get comfortable with his role. Now, is this an ROS thing? I think it would be close to. It's still on the higher side, but I think that think of a pendulum. He was on the wrong side to start the season. He swung it to the extreme, positive side now. Obviously, given this wide spectrum that he's gone through, we're going to see a lot of back and forth. So you're probably going to come back to us at some point, and with him on a slump, hey, Eric, should I drop Jabari Smith? Because is this slump an ROS thing? Right. So I'm just saying we're going to see a lot of volatility. Overall, I think he's going to perform pretty well. Maybe, be a steady top 100 guy, but it's going to be shaky and it's going to be a bumpy ride. If you're going to sell high now, you can, because like I said, we're on the better end of his spectrum. Who would I target? Okay, I cannot answer that in a vacuum. I would specifically go after improving on your team's strengths. For example, Smith does not, as we mentioned, shoot the ball well from the field. If you're trying to win field goal every week, he's not going to help you in that department. And in some cases, given the volume that he's been shooting lately, and if he doesn't shoot it too well, he's going to hurt you there. So you might want to, pivot, find a guy who shoots better from the field, and get your threes elsewhere. So it's a team needs situation right now. We're past the pure value for value, swapping kind of situation. At this point, like Ethan said, we're a month in. You know your team's strengths, you know your team's weaknesses. So focus on that and build towards, what should be a winning formula moving forward, and that's the play.
Yeah, I mean, here's the only thing that I would add is I think, the hardest thing for all of us as humans to do, right, in this age of immediacy and instant information is to have delayed gratification. We got to remember, these guys who are just coming into the league, they're just coming into the league. So there's going to be an adjustment period, especially when they're on a bad or underperforming team. There's always going to be room for growth. There's going to be room for decline. And to Eric, like Eric said, I like the pendulum analogy, right? It's going to swing back and forth a little bit too. So the other thing for me is, if I'm considering a keep or a sell high, I always try to put myself in the other general manager's shoes and say, okay, if I'm the other guy who's interested in trading for Jabari, what am I going to give up right now? You're probably not giving up a difference maker. You're probably not giving up a guy you drafted in the 5th or 6th round, right? So if you're just taking a gamble on another guy who, was drafted in the 9th or 10th round, who might be a maybe, then I'll keep my maybe. I'm not swapping maybe for maybe. I'm just trading a headache for a pain in the knee, right? It's still a pain at the end of the day. So unless there is some sort of, you could add Jabari in a deal for a 2-for-1 and get a top 40 player because, you're trading a top 65 guy and Jabari's hype, then maybe I'd more consider that. But if you're just trading a maybe for a maybe, that's what it is. Just real quick while we're here, OJ added that Jabari fits the 9-cap build perfectly, but the inconsistencies worry him, looking for his type of build players. Well, dude, if you're looking for that type of build, then keep the guy. I mean, that would be what I would do.
Yeah,
Like, just
that's
that,
easy for me too.
if he fits your build, keep the guy and keep it going, man. All right. Thank you, OJ. Appreciate that, man. Any more questions, feel free to send them. Hayden, I know you propped in 2 questions. We're going to combine them together here. Hayden wants to know, we'll start with this one, Seth Curry, Jalen Suggs, or Max Strus, which is a crazy set of names to all be in the same sentence, in a 9-cat roto league, punting turnovers. Eric, where are you at?
Oh,
there's such a difference between these 3 players, too, by the way.
They're very different.
Yeah.
All right. Despite injury management missed games, after tonight, I'm convinced Seth Curry's per game numbers are gonna, begin to tick up and hit a steady plateau of 12 team value range consistently ROS. I think he's finally there. He got over the hump. And obviously the Nets are just going to take care of their guy. He's got some mileage under that, on those sneakers, and he's coming off an injury, et cetera, et cetera. Suggs kind of fits your punting TOs thing, but based on the latest reports, the Orlando Magic backcourt is going to get healthier in the coming weeks. I believe Markelle Fultz is on his way back early December, so he's already going to start clogging things up. Cole Anthony probably will return sometime, maybe in December, I think. I'm just not sure exactly when. So even though Suggs fits your punt, his overall contributions are going to see a dip. Strus, he's a great 3-point specialist. Probably going to end up playing more games on average than Seth Curry, but he doesn't do much else. He'll probably not hurt you too much on field goal on most nights. But then we're talking about a 2-cat guy, 3-cat. Well, 2-cat because you're punting TOs, and his lack of TOs don't really, move the needle for you. So I'd go with Seth Curry, Suggs, and then Strus.
I think that's my order too. My concern with Strus is, Jimmy Butler's on the sidelines. I know Strus had some games before Jimmy Butler was hurt where he showed well. If I can avoid Miami outright for fantasy purposes, I want to. It's a weird construct. It's a strange team. Bam Adebayo's fine, I guess, but even not a guy that I targeted in drafts. Like, I would just avoid Miami. Like, that's me. There's certain teams every year where I'm like, I just don't really want a part of that situation this year. Miami made the list for me this year, so I'm kind of just out on Strus. I agree. I said that about Suggs 2 weeks ago, what Eric just outlined. There's too many mouths to feed, too much inconsistency. Suggs looks good one night, looks very average the next. Not what I'm looking for. Seth Curry, they need his offense. They need his 3-point shooting. Last 2 games, he's averaging over 20 a game, 5.5 threes. I agree, as he gets healthier, that's the version of Seth we should see, especially if he's going to have, Ben Simmons producing around him, by the way, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving returning to form, and then TJ Warren on his way back, who I know we have a question about, so we'll get to that in a couple minutes too. So hopefully that helps. Hayden, Curry, Suggs, Strus, sounds like in that order. He also wanted to know one more for Hayden. Poku or Nance, 9-category league.
All right. This is a bit easier for me because I think Poku will have the clearer path to minutes and production. The thing is, he's not also going to be able to take advantage of those minutes every night.
Poku also weighs like 132 pounds. So if that's a factor, I don't know.
Okay, that's like my left thigh. So, kidding aside, Nance has, guys ahead of him who are playing well, who the Pelicans would rather, see play a ton of minutes and not need Nance. Even though Nance can be productive as a per minute guy, better production despite limited minutes. You're talking, he's playing behind Zion. You're playing behind, Valanciunas. If either or both of those guys are playing well on any given night, there won't be enough minutes on the table for Nance to take advantage of, even if he can, give you maybe 6 boards, a steal here and there, and some assists.
He's so frustrating, but I mean that with like a big old like hard hands around it, because to your point, when Valanciunas and or Zion are out of the lineup, injury management, whatever, like Nance is the guy I want to stream. Like I wish I could stream him every single time one of those things happens, because he seems to produce, in multiple categories. However, he's one of those guys who's like, the minute you pick him up to stream him, he disappoints you. Then you cut him. Then he has a game, right? He's one of those that you're always on the wrong end, it seems like, unless you just keep him on the roster for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then you're like, is this guy even roster worthy? So,
Yeah,
I feel like Poku has more upside.
they're both frustrating.
They're both very frustrating. I think the best way for me to say it is this. I think Poku has the higher ceiling, but Nance has the higher floor. Okay,
That's a great way to characterize things.
That's kind of, so it depends on if you need upside or if you need that steady production. Hopefully that helps, Hayden. I know that's kind of a weird in between there. Sheldon, guys, we love the questions, by the way. Keep them coming. We appreciate it. We hope every show goes like this, or we don't even have to open our mouths and we just answer your questions, because we're here for you at the end of the day. All right, Sheldon. Hopefully this isn't as big of a thing for you as the Big Bang was. Just kidding. All right, haha, good dad joke there. All right, better pick up this upcoming week. Denny Avdija, your boy Eric, Murphy or Payne, 9-cat, 12-team league. Sounds like Chris Paul's still going to be out to start this week. Campaign has been cooled off a little bit, but, as long as Chris Paul's out of lineup, I think this is an easy campaign for me.
Yeah, definitely campaign. He is a must roster guy, volatility aside, until Chris Paul comes back.
And I gotta say, just real quick on campaign, this is a dude who was a lottery pick, where everybody, like, I remember when he was picked, right, by the Thunder, the Lakers, who had the number 2 pick that year, they wound up taking Lonzo Ball instead of Jason Tatum. Let's not talk too much about that, okay? Let's not talk too much about that, okay? But this is the guy the Lakers brought into work. I mean, he really shot up in the pre-draft workout, kind of like D'Angelo Russell before that. Remember, when D'Angelo was going into his draft year, he was like barely a top 50 prospect. And then he really had that high rising trajectory over the course of the season. Campaign followed a similar story, really underwhelmed with OKC, found himself out of the league. Like, nobody wanted him, had to go overseas to reestablish himself, really just kind of got an opportunity out of nowhere and has made good on it and then some, because for all of his flaws, he is definitely an NBA player. So I like when that sort of stuff happens, where a guy who's drafted high kind of has to humble himself a little bit, come back, take advantage of an opportunity that's presented.
I love the narrative.
I'm big on narrative. To your point earlier, like, I love contract year guys, right? Guys who have to prove something. I love all that sort of stuff. It's an extra. At the end of the day, we play fantasy to make the right decisions, to make money if you got money involved, but also to have fun. If you don't enjoy it, like, what's the point, right? Because then it's just becomes stressful. So I love that. That's just a quick side note on campaign. But I think all of these guys are okay. I mean, I like Denny second best on that list. I like Murphy third best. In certain games, I like Murphy over Denny. But again, it's just that consistency piece for me. I think Denny has a more consistent role than Murphy does when everybody's healthy on their respective teams.
Yeah. And if you think about it this way, Sheldon, since Chris Paul has come to Phoenix, no other player in the NBA has played more games, practices included, against Chris Paul than Cameron Payne. He's obviously on the opposite end when they're throwing all those practices. This guy has to face Chris Paul at practice every single time that Chris Paul is able to practice. So if that doesn't if that kind of pressure doesn't turn a coal into a diamond, I don't know what would, right?
Love that. All right. I love that. Sheldon also wanted to add, Eric, TJ Warren returning this week. Kind of got the news out of nowhere, like, oh, by the way, TJ Warren is on track to return this week. I think Shams wanted to take the sort of heat off of himself after it was turned out that he may or may not run the Hoop Central Twitter account. I don't know if you got into that hoopla this week, Eric, but Shams posted, or the Hoop Central Twitter account posted this thing that, Patrick Beverley's suspension. And he posted a screenshot from Instagram. And then it says, reply to Draymond Green's comment. It's got a little picture of Shams there. So everybody was insinuating that Shams actually runs the Hoop Central account. And look at the shade he runs to Westbrook. Anyway, it was a whole thing on the internet this week. But he shared the news, right? I mean, it's the NBA. That's like part of the thing we love, right? All right. TJ Warren returning this week. I mean, in theory, I'm excited. I can't wait to see him. He hasn't played in what feels like 5 years. It's been like 2.5, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time for TJ Warren. I need to see it. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, as a basketball player, has missed 2 years because of a foot injury, which, feet are pretty important for basketball. I'm not in a rush. Let me put it like that. I think there are other guys who can be more productive to you now. I think that TJ Warren, given the amount of time he's missed, they're probably going to baby him pretty hard initially upon his return, right? Like short micro stints. I can see him playing 12 to 14 minutes, sitting in back-to-backs, all those sorts of things. So in the long term, I think he's a curious player. I think he's to work in the Lakers angle. I think he's exactly the kind of build-a player the Lakers could really use, actually. I think about Jay Crowder sitting at home right now doing nothing. Can we get him on the Lakers, right? All these kinds of guys who are on other teams who should be on the Lakers. I'm going to drop it there. But for a fantasy asset, I mean, we haven't seen it from TJ Warren for so long. I'm not in a rush, Eric. Are you?
No, I'm not. But to be transparent, Sheldon, I've seen him after the news broke. He was already picked up in 2 of my 16-team leagues. Again, these are deeper leagues. And as Ethan mentioned earlier, the wires have been kind of dry, so I assume that the managers were rolling the dice.
But and I think in a league of that size, that makes sense, right? Sure. Because in a 16-team league, right, even if you have the exact same roster size as a 12-team league, you're talking about basically that whole first page of guys who would normally be on your waiver wire in a 12-team league being not there and starting with the second page. So you're starting with some crust to begin with, right? So sure, that in that context, I'll gamble on TJ Warren because I have a guy who's playing 12 minutes a game in my streamer spot right now, right? But in a 12-team league or anything smaller than that, I just don't think we're there yet. I give you a guy who should be in 12-team leagues instead, who plays a similar position, who might produce some of the same stats you're looking for from TJ Warren, and that's Caleb Martin. I know I said I don't want Miami, but Caleb Martin in Miami, that's the guy. Give me Caleb Martin over TJ Warren. Eric, is that your guy or what?
Yeah. I love Caleb Martin. He's one of the guys that we really hit hard in the draft guide here at Ethos, and everyone who was in on that is reaping the benefits of our foresight. He's in particular Brewski's guy. Brewski really loves Martin. So he's exactly the guy that is producing the kind of numbers you'd expect from a TJ Warren during TJ Warren's prime. Which, like you said, he's not gonna, come back and pop off like it was yesterday. Just look at John Wall. I expected a nice bounce back from him. Yeah, he is, but he's not prime John Wall. And I don't think we're ever gonna see prime John Wall again. We might not see a prime TJ Warren again. So even in deep leagues, I hesitate because I'm looking at the wire. Here's TJ Warren coming back, and I'm trying to picture his ceiling. Yeah. Okay, would I want somebody with a better established floor already? Take, for example, Justice Winslow, right? Yeah, in a 16-team league, he produced something like 14 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, 2 threes, which is fantastic if we're talking about 16 teams. Yeah. Obviously, TJ Warren's not going to produce those numbers off the bat. So who would you rather add, Winslow or Warren? That's a tough question, and I'm playing it safe at this point. Unless you're, top dog in your league standings and can afford to sit on your TJ Warren pickup for quite a while, I'd go with the guy who's already, posting the numbers you're looking for. I mean, 14, 7, and 6 is no joke. Yep. So Winslow it is for me. Between Winslow and Warren, I'd consider Winslow.
I think you got better options than Warren for sure. Appreciate that, Sheldon. It's always good to check in on players who are returning after a long time. We're going to go back to OJ before we go on some more players on our list, guys. We do have more time for questions, so feel free to keep sending them. OJ, would you take the upside in Poku or hold on Plumlee with unicorn build fitting my team? Love that unicorn build. We're gonna trademark that. With unicorn build fitting my team, Plumlee is very consistent. What would you do, Eric? Before I toss this to you, the only thing I would say is that I think for me, if I was making this decision, part of the decision-making process would also be for me where I am in the standings, right? Like if I'm in the top 4 and I'm within 5 games of first place, then I'm probably going to try to make as few changes as possible here because my team is going pretty well right now. Okay. If I'm 8th and I'm already 13 games back of a playoff spot or something like that, then I might gamble more on the upside, right? But I would also see, like, can you trade Plumlee while he has this value for a position where you might be struggling on your roster, right? Or even use him in a 2-for-1, and then you pick up Poku as well, right? So it evens out to be a 2-for-2. I think the 2-for-1 is very, like, criminally underrated in fantasy circles. I don't think people consider that enough. They just try to do, I'm going to trade you my 2 stars for you 2 scrubs, or I'm going to give you the highlight name, but I'm actually going to take your 2 best players from you. The idea of a trade is that it benefits both teams. I think the Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis trade is like one of the best examples in recent memory of how it can really impact both teams so well. The Kings don't miss Tyrese Halliburton. The Pacers don't miss Sabonis. And both of those players are much happier to be on their current teams than they were prior, right? So keep that in mind. Try to come with a different angle than what everybody else is doing. Everybody else in your league is trying to win the trade. Be that person who puts the fair deal on the table, who gives a little bit more upside, who can give you a little bit more in the long run, and you'd be surprised how you can start making some deals, especially with so many people dug in on trades. I think that's kind of how I would play it. What would you do, Eric? Listen, and by the way, this is for a 10-team league.
All right.
We can't hear you, buddy. Eric, can you hear us? We can't hear you. All right, well, Eric's figuring it out. We'll see what we got going. So we'll wait for Eric.
Hello?
Yeah,
there we
he
go.
is. All right, Eric, you're back. We almost lost you, but we brought you back.
All right. We're talking about a ceiling versus floor situation here. Poku obviously has the higher ceiling, but Plumlee has been showing that he has a more stable floor. I'm with Ethan on this. If your team is working, I wouldn't necessarily fix what ain't broken, so to speak.
Yeah.
I would take greater risks if I was coming from behind and gambling on upside. What I do have to say about Poku is that he will have more opportunities for explosive games. He's the type of player who can explode with a huge quote-unquote unicorn line, as you say.
Yeah.
The thing is, even if his unicorn build fits your team, he's not going to produce unicorn stats every game, and he's already shown that because consistency is his biggest issue right now. He fell off big time last game and played subpar minutes, subpar production from Poku, and it's not looking good if you're counting on that particular roster spot. Yeah, but you're gonna get your rebounds, you're gonna get your passing, occasional blocks from Plumlee. Fine, he's gonna hurt your free throw, but if you're already punting that, it's gonna be fine. So yeah, same advice. If you're ahead, don't mess with it. If you're coming from behind and you want to swing for the fences, so to speak, go for Poku.
All right. So I think that's where we're at. Got another one coming from Mr. C. Mr. C, I apologize. We missed your first question. Appreciate the compliment. He said, great content, fellas. While we're on the Poku subject, he said, I got Poku and I have Isaiah Jackson. He needs to drop one. Which one is it going to be? And then the same question. And then he's got another question, Plumlee or Mitch Robb, rest of season 12 team head-to-head. So let's start with the first one. His first question was, he's got Poku and Jackson. He needs to drop one. Which one is it for you, Eric?
Ooh. Okay. I really would like to keep Jackson as much as possible, but he's been struggling. He hasn't even cracked 20 minutes tonight in a game versus the Clippers. In a game where Zubac's just, totally crushed.
0 rebounds tonight, by the way. 0.
Yeah. See, again, all right. If we're just laying the context of analysis here,
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, given the right situation, will have the higher ceiling, but that is a matter of if Turner is traded, et cetera, if Turner gets injured, et cetera. So it's like if you're looking at the NFL and you're looking at the backup, quarterback, when the quarterback is still healthy. It's nice. He's nice to look at, but he's not going to produce those numbers. So, given the current pace of what's happening, I would probably have to drop Jackson. Uh, but I have a funny feeling that somebody else in your league is going to pick him up and is going to be trying to play the patience game. So just be ready to not have any regrets in that area.
Both of these guys, though, Eric. I mean, you tell me if you feel the same way. For me, both of these guys they're not must roster. Like, I'm sorry, like they're both such if this, maybe that. Things it's like putting a chip down the Plinko board or the Price is Right. It has to go exactly the right way for the outcome to be aligned with what you want it to be. And there's so much that we can't control. To Hayden's point, Hayden just put in the chat, Poku's minutes in the last 5 games, 4, 28, 26, 19, 16. And I think his most recent game, he had like 9 minutes. So, it's right. Like, how do you, in this game where we're talking all about the projectables and being able to project things out, you just can't project it. And with Isaiah Jackson, if Miles Turner gets traded, there's a path. But that's still such a big if, and every day that goes by, it hasn't happened yet. We're a month into the season. We're still waiting on when Miles Turner gets traded. Like, how many opportunities have you lost in the interim waiting for a maybe, right? It's like, do you want to go out with the girl who says yes, or do you want to keep waiting for the girl who keeps saying maybe for a year? And the girl who said yes, who now you want to go out with, well, now she's got a boyfriend, right? Like, it's one of those situations where you can't straddle the line and walk on the line at the same time. You have to pick a lane and drive in it. I think both of these guys are just, maybes. They're kind of
they're streamer guys right now.
I mean, that is what it is. And unfortunately, the Pacers are, I think, a little bit better than what even they thought they would be. And the Thunder are just, nobody really knows. We know SGA is good. We think Giddey's going to be good. And that's about all we know about the Thunder right now. Like, that's really it. And they've got Lou Dort. Everything else is, we'll see, right? And don't forget, by the way, Chet Holmgren is watching all this from the bench. So we'll see how it goes there. This is the more interesting question to me. Plumlee or Mitchell Robinson rest of season, 12-team head-to-head league. Eric, I told you in one very competitive league that I had, I instantly regretted Mitchell Robinson's draft pick, right? Instant regret. That regret has stayed with me all the way through until today. And Hayden, it's like he knew what I was going to say. Hey, he was great tonight. Mitchell Robinson was great. It was his first good game basically all year, right? Like, when the Knicks gave him $60 million, this is what they expected, right? We've still got Jericho Sims. We've still got Isaiah Hartenstein. For me, I just think the ceiling is so much higher on Mitchell Robinson. So if you're just straight linear comparison, one or the other, Mitchell Robinson's going to have some games that frustrate you in the interim, but I'll still take him over Plumlee as frustrating and as much regret as I had over that pick.
Yeah, I agree. Just look at it this way. Based on what they bring to the table, blocks are harder to find on the wire. So I would choose Robinson because he delivers a category that's, scarce in terms of, production. So, if he somehow gives you like 7 blocks in a week, that's almost already a matchup changing number of blocks, depending on how much your team is already producing, over the week. So yeah, there's that. And there's also the fact that given how terrible the Hornets are, they are a team that might really go for that unspeakable, the T word that should not be mentioned, or otherwise incur the wrath of Adam Silver. But
they've already incurred some wrath this week from Robin Hayward, Gordon's wife, about what injuries he may or may not have. So
all right. The thing is, if they do tank, all right, we're just armchair experts here anyway. If they do tank, Plumlee is the kind of guy that they're gonna sit. There's no point in playing a guy like Plumlee 20, 25, 26 minutes a game. So yeah, so there's a risk there. Unlike in New York, okay, as much as I was high on Hartenstein earlier on, there's a reason why he's currently sucking so bad. He admitted that he is dealing with a sore Achilles or something. Something's off. He's not 100% healthy, and that's why he's not playing up to his Clipper level numbers, and that's weighing. And while he's arguably the most talented, most skilled center, he's not playing up to that level. So it's going to be up to Robinson to really deliver and put in quality minutes for the Knicks moving forward. And like you said, he was good tonight, and that could be the switch. Yeah, sometimes the guys come into the season turned off in off-season mode, and they have to turn things on, and it takes a while. It might have taken Mitchell Robinson a month, right? And now he's probably
looks like that's the case exactly. About a
right.
month.
I mean, well, it could also just be one good game, and he could suck again. But out of the three centers that the Knicks are running every night, I'd put my money on Mitchell Robinson. Right now, given Hartenstein's injury.
And that's sort of less about Mitchell Robinson, the player, and more about the scenario. But here's what I'll add, okay? The last two games, he's been good. I mean, he's averaging 14 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 blocks, and he's 12 of 14 from the field. His field goal percentage is 86% over the last two games. I mean, if you draft Mitchell Robinson, that's what you're looking for. But that's all we've seen from him this year. I do want to add that both of these games, against Portland, against Memphis, were both very high-scoring games, okay? 132, 129 against Portland, 127, 123 against Memphis. So not every game the Knicks are going to play in is going to be that high-scoring. Here's the other thing, right? Portland, Yusuf Nurkic, Memphis, Steven Adams, right? Those types of centers, that's a better matchup for Mitchell Robinson. So it's not just about, the production. It's also about the individual matchup. Again, if this is Mitchell Robinson or Mason Plumlee, which it is, like this is Mitchell Robinson. But I don't know that this is the Mitchell Robinson we're going to get for the rest of the season either. I think it's sort of comical when you think about the Knicks investments. $60 million in Mitchell Robinson, $100 million in Jalen Brunson, $80 million in Evan Fournier, $100+ million in RJ Barrett, $140 million or some crazy number in Julius Randle. I mean, what did they expect when committing $500 million to a mediocre core? I mean, that's the results are the results. Evan Fournier can't even get off the bench. So the Knicks are a team who I don't think they really know their identity, right? RJ Barrett has been one of the worst offensive players in the NBA this year. He's historically bad on defense, and he just got $100 million from the Knicks. So it feels like the Knicks don't quite know what their identity is as a team, and that always scares me because that level is going to fluctuate for a player like Mitchell Robinson, who's not like his production is so dependent upon his usage as well as other guys seeing him on the floor. He's not going to just get out there and create for himself. So, he needs to be less Bismack Biyombo and more, I don't know, like this is like this version of Mitchell Robinson. I'm going to give you a real throwback name here. This is like what Samuel Dalembert used to be for so many fantasy teams back in the day, right? Okay, so like 11 points, 11 rebounds, a couple blocks, right? It ain't sexy, but it gets the job done, right? And Samuel Dalembert got paid along the way to do that. So that's how I'll kind of add into that. Hopefully that helps. I think we'll end it here, Eric. Before we get to this question, I just wanted to shout out a couple quick guys. George Niang, over his last 6 games, he's had 18 threes. He's less than 20% rostered in Yahoo leagues.
Yeah.
The Sixers need guys like that. I think there's still a path for him, even as Harden gets healthy, Maxey gets healthy. Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham's probably out for the rest of the season. Killian Hayes still rostered in less than 50% of Yahoo leagues. Field goal percentage needs to come up for sure. But 10 points, 6 assists, 1.3 steals as a starter, shooting like 40% from the three. You like that? John Conchar as well. Desmond Bane's still out of the lineup. He's a guy who's doing things for Memphis. So if you're not already on those guys, I just want to make sure we mention those as well. And then OJ to end us tonight. OJ, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for all the questions as well, the interactions. Eric and I really enjoyed this. If I can speak for Eric for a second. Jalen Smith finally picking up his form, or is he still a 12-team drop? Eric, Jalen Smith?
Oh, my God. You're breaking my heart. I had a pre-draft crush on Jalen Smith. I went heavy on him. Admittedly, he's been frustrating. He's been pretty much a big disappointment. He's not producing the efficient scoring with 1-1-1 that I was kind of expecting to see. Is he finally picking up his form? Maybe. The thing is, nothing really changed with the Pacers tonight. to signify that, that was the catalyst of, that he's finally turned it up. I think it was a good game, but
sure.
the more good games that guys like Jalen Smith, who's a player who didn't get a lot of opportunities to shine earlier in his career, the more good games he gets under his belt, the more confidence it builds in him. And for a lot of players, specifically like Jalen Smith, I think it might be a confidence issue. Right now, he's playing alongside arguably one of the best shot blockers in the league in Miles Turner. So he goes, okay,
one of the best centers in the league right now. Let me just
or overall, right? He's like
honestly,
top 10. He's top 10 fantasy wise.
Yep.
Let's give him that. So if I'm Jalen Smith, I'm looking at, Miles getting all these posters blocking, elite players. I'm thinking to myself, am I going to cramp his style or do what's best for the team? Because I'm a role player from the Suns who just, got a new lease on life here in the Pacers. I'm having fun playing with these, fellow young guys. What am I going to do? I mean, I think Jalen Smith still has to find his fit. Right now, we're seeing the Mathurin Halliburton synergy, juicing things up for the Pacers, and it's been looking good. All right. But Smith is still lost in the shuffle. But the moment he finds his way, this kid can pop. I mean, he's already shown he can play. And he's already locked in as a starting power forward. For now, yeah, if you're really desperate and if you have a phenomenal player in mind to pick up in your 12-team league, go ahead. I'm holding on to him I only have him in my 16-team league, so obviously I have to hold him because the wire is a lot drier there.
Yeah, that's a different thing, for sure.
Yeah, that's a totally different story. But I cannot guarantee to you, OJ, that he's finally picking up his form. But this was a good game, and good games always have that opportunity, to start building momentum.
He is, to me, like two things for Jalen Smith. Unless you have a guy who you really want to add, like not just a stream, but you really want to add off the wire, you're probably keeping him around. But here's my thing. On the season, he's outside the top 150. He's almost outside the top 175 on the season. There's a 9-cat league. Okay, so he's not exactly an irreplaceable player. I think the fact that he's still rostered in 2/3 of leagues is way too high. I mean, it just how is he rostered in 2/3 of leagues, but Killian Hayes is only in 41%? Like that's the type of thing that doesn't really add up for me. Okay, especially in a majority of leagues where you're only playing one center potentially. And I know Jalen Smith is both power forward and center eligible, but it just strikes me as a weird balance. But he's also a maybe. He's a guy who has to have something happen for him to really be the player that so many people want him to be. So if you have a guy who you can't resist adding, then yeah, it's time to move on from Jalen Smith. If you want to keep him around just to see, that's fine. In full disclosure, I have a weird work schedule right now, so I'm working most weekends and I'm off more during the week. So I didn't see this Clippers-Pacers game. I just learned right now, I was today years old, when I learned that Ivica Zubac went for 31 and 29 against the Pacers today. And as if I needed more salt to pour into my wound, that is the Mike Muscala for Ivica Zubac trade, I think I just set myself on fire, okay? So everybody who's still watching, congratulations. You're going to see me burst into flames shortly. Like, I still can't believe the Lakers made that trade. 31 and 29 for Zubac. I mean, you want to talk about a statement game, my God. So that has nothing to do with fantasy because Zubac is rostered in your league. But my goodness, like I just 31 and 29, like that is might as well be a Vita Wilt Chamberlain Zubac out there. I don't know what to say besides that. I mean, that's just incredible stuff. So hopefully that helps, guys. We really appreciate all your questions that you stay up with us, whether it's the morning for you like Eric, late on the East Coast, settling into your evening on the West Coast or somewhere in between in the Central. Maybe you're in Canada, maybe you're in Mexico, maybe you're in Israel. I don't know. Wherever you are in the world, we appreciate you tuning in. You can always find us on Twitter, okay? Rotomancer over there because, you know, he likes to be that guy, brings it all together, all under the sun of the fantasy basketball gods. You find me on Twitter, just my name, Ethan_Norof. You find me far, far away from Elon Musk, and we're going to have a good time as long as Twitter's still a thing. But until then, you can also find our work on the site, here on YouTube, on our videos, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. Eric, it's going to be a good week ahead. Thank you guys for everything. We'll sneak in one. Chaz just at the deadline. traded SGA and Ben Simmons for Halliburton and Clay. Is it worth it long term? Whoo, that is spicy. That is my kind of trade right there. Yeah, you know what? I like Tyrese Halliburton more than SGA. I like his injury volatility a little more or a little less. I think SGA is a potential shutdown candidate, as always, at the end of the year. Simmons for Clay. I like Clay more outright from a three-point perspective. Simmons a little bit more of an unknown. Or did you mean Simons? Did he mean Anthony Simons?
Simons.
Okay, so if he meant Anthony Simons, then yeah, I like Halliburton and Clay outright. That's not even hard for me. Where are you at?
Ooh, this is tough. All right, I'm going to stick to my guns. Even though I'm enjoying every single game I'm getting out of my one SGA share out of my leagues this year, I was all in on Halliburton. I'm 100% believer. I think that he can still get even better as the season progresses. We're looking at the tip of the iceberg based on what I'm
Halliburton top 10 fantasy asset. Let's go.
There we go.
I am riding this train.
Ethan said it. That's it.
All right. Chaz did confirm that was
Thank
Anthony
you for your questions.
All right. That's how
have
we
a
like
2
to
months week ahead.
That's how we like to end an episode. We like to light it on fire and say, that's it, baby. We're going to be back next week. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you soon. Until then, we out.